Hey, how's it going, everyone? So, I have a lot of flowers open tonight, and my plan was to pollinate all the flowers with this Stenocereus datawensis. But as I was moving the anthers around, I don't see dust falling. I don't see the pollen. I'm gonna use my little vacuum here and see if I could get the pollen. Let's see how much pollen I could get, if any. If the pollen sacs have not bursted on this yet, then I have a plan B. Okay. So let's see if we have pollen or we just have little pollen sacs. There is some pollen. Not as much as I wished, but there is pollen here. You see it? It's a powder right there. Yeah, I don't think all the pollen sacs they haven't burst yet. So that's why there isn't a crazy amount of pollen here. But that's enough. So I'll go ahead and use this. On to the next flower. Okay, so this is flower, the Stenocereus flower number 2. Now, if you see the flower, it is, let me use this for reference. Look at the size of this flower. It is massive. And let me just walk back here really quick to the first flower, so you can see this, and we could use this, the little vacuum, the part of the vacuum, as a size reference. So check this out. Oh, 1 second. You see how this is much bigger than the flower? But in the other flower over here, let's number them. So that's gonna be flower number 1, which is a Stenocereus. And this flower is in the flower number 2. This is a Stenocereus also. But look at this flower. Absolutely massive. Way bigger than this. And the other flower is smaller than this. So, let me do the little anther shake test. Oh, did you see that? Look at this. Did you see how pollen is falling? Let me, yeah, so pollen, this has a lot more pollen than the other flower. So what I'm going to do though is pollinate this flower first. And if you see, this flower is pretty crazy. Oh, sorry, I'm blocking here. I'm going to use the back end of the brush just to pry open the flower. Just push it down, because there's a hole right in the middle of the stigma, and that's where you want to put your pollen. So here's the stigma. Here's the stigma here. You want to put the pollen in the middle. So like I said, there is not that much pollen. Look, this is I have 3 clean brushes with me. This is the first one. Completely clean, brand new. And let me, wow, this kind of sucks. You know what? Look at this. This pollen's, oh, it does have pollen. Okay, so let me try to pollinate this flower with this pollen here. So let me try that first, okay? So, yeah, I'm not really too happy with this pollen here. So I'm just gonna do a big old, I'm gonna have to switch to plan B, because I don't like the pollen from that first flower. The pollen sacs haven't burst. It's pretty cold outside. I believe like 2 days ago I had a flower, and even in the morning it had no pollen. Yeah, just the weather kept the flower from, look at this. There's like hardly any pollen. Yeah, this really sucks. So I'm gonna go to plan B. I was gonna use this pollen to try to pollinate the other two flowers, the other few flowers I have, but this is not going to work. So, plan B. All right, I'll be back. Hold on. So my plan B is, let me see one more time. Let me try to get some, well, there is some pollen. Okay, let me try to pollinate this Martinezii. This is flower number 3, a Stenocereus Martinezii. And let me go like this sideways. So there is some pollen. I'm just really unhappy with the amount of pollen that this has. But let me try to, this one's a little harder. The flower is the stigma is really in there. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. I can't get that good of a visual here. So the stigma is really in there, but I'm just grabbing it with the finger. So I'm gonna try to pollinate it, but I'm not really happy with that pollen. So going to plan B. So the plan B, I'm just gonna toss this pollen out. There's a little bit of pollen residue, and that's perfect. So I'm gonna put my little vacuum back together, and I'm gonna get the pollen from the flower number 2, which is also a Stenocereus gedetatoensis. So for this one, I'm going to collect this pollen right here. It's crazy how big these flowers are. Definitely crazy. I'm not going to worry about making a hybrid. I'm not going to keep track. I just want fruit. I'll have plenty of other chances to do a controlled hybrid. So look at this. Look at this. This is what I want. So with this pollen, you know what? With that pollen, I'm going to pollinate the flower in the back first. I'm going to use this gedetatoensis giant flower pollen. Yeah, I'm going to use the giant flower pollen on this Stenocereus gedetatoensis. But you know what? I want to try something else. Yeah, I get kind of crazy sometimes. So, I was going to pollinate that, but before I do, yeah, I should have wrote down my plan. So, let me transfer this pollen to a little container first. Actually, no. I'm just gonna go ahead and use this pollen here. I'm gonna get a bunch of this pollen. I'm gonna get a bunch of this pollen like this. It's crazy. I'm just gonna set that aside, and then I'm going to collect some Martinezii pollen in the same vacuum. Okay. Okay. So now that I vacuumed that flower number 3, the Martinezii, I'm gonna pollinate it with all this pollen right here. It's fucking crazy. So let's see if I could get a good angle here. The stigma is really in there. Yeah, I don't like these Martinezii flowers. They're not that easy to pollinate. So here we go. I just put a whole lot of pollen from the Querétaroensis number 2 on this flower right here. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is go pollinate flower number 1. And so again, this has Stenocereus martinezii pollen, and it also has the giant flower over here, the giant flower Querétaroensis. So this has pollen from flower number 2 and flower number 3. Okay, and we have a few more flowers to pollinate, but okay. So this flower is really up here. So let me uncover this. Look at all this pollen, guys. It is absolutely nuts. So this is this is a pollen from 3 different Stenocereus. Okay. Look at all this. It's crazy. And I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use this on the flower up here. Okay, so I'm going to use this on the flower up here. The stigma's right here. And there it goes. I'm putting a crap load of pollen here. There's no reason this shouldn't pollinate. So there's a crap load of pollen I'm putting. Look, I'm going to put more. How about that? How about them apples? Okay. So that has pollen on it right there. And again, this has 2 types of pollen here. So flower number 1 has been pollinated. Flower number 2, I would say, has been pollinated too, but I'm going to use a different pollen too, just in case. So with the very last cactus that has 2 flowers that are open, it might be a clone with this one. So I don't want to use the same pollen. So I'm gonna try doing something right now. I know this has a little bit of martinezii pollen mixed in, but let me see if I could get a little. Let me see. Just give me a second here, guys. Let me get a little. So this is an old used container. Yeah, this is an old use. I have an old use container here. You know what? I'm gonna use this, the lid. Let me just clean it with my t-shirt. So I'm gonna get another one of these little vacuums because when I'm doing multiple pollinations, I want to keep the pollen separated. Okay, so I'm going to empty out the pollen into this little lid right here. This little lid. I'm going to set this aside for pollen, for flower number. Let me put the brush aside too for now. Okay, let's go to pollen or flower number, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pollen number 4. So if you see, this is fairly clean. There's some residue. That's okay. I'm going to try to collect pollen from this. It's a Stenocereus hybrid, a Pernosis crossed with a Polacca chichipe. So the flower kind of looks like both Pernosis and Pollaskia. It's kind of a funky looking flower. Look at this. See how the petals bend all the way back. It's a smaller flower. It's probably the size of the, kind of like the Martinezii flower. So let me vacuum this. Let's see if I get any pollen or if I just get pollen sacs. Hopefully I get some good stuff here. If you see the totally rated that flower. Oh yeah, look at all this pollen. Okay, so now this is a different variety. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to, here, let me get a new brush. I'm going to pollinate, gonna put some of this pollen from that one cactus up there on this flower number 3. Just gonna dab it on there. And then also on flower number 2, which is a giant Querétaroensis flower. Let me get some of this pollen here. And I'm also going to put some of this on flower number 1. So I'm totally mixing up all this pollen. I really wish I had 2 vacuums. That would have been ideal. So there's this guy up here. Let me get some of this pollen here. Okay, let me dab this on. Okay, so now I have about 2 types of pollen. I have 2 types of pollen on this flower right here. So this flower should be good, but I'm still gonna put more. You'll see right now. It doesn't need any more, but I'm still gonna do it. Fuck it. Okay. So there's not that much pollen left here, but what I'm going to try to do is, you know what? I'm gonna try to use a vacuum again on that one right there. Just one more time. See if I could get more pollen. Seems like I got a lot of the anthers, but I need more pollen. So let me get this pollen. Get up in there. Oh, and that's pretty good. Okay, so what I am going to do now is I'm just going to dump all this pollen into this little container here. And this is the pollen that I'm going to use for the front flowers. But before I do that, I'm going to collect pollen from there too. So it's next to my neighbor's window. It's the nighttime. It's really late, so I'm going to do this as quick as possible. I'm going to vacuum some pollen from those 2 flowers, which I will show you right now. And then I will, it's in the front house, it's in the front of the house. It's up there. Can you see them? Let me climb up there. Okay, I'm going to vacuum the pollen here. So I got the pollen. Now I'm going to cross it with all of this pollen here. Okay. Let's go down. Oh. 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 Okay. Let's see how much pollen I collected. Should be a lot. Oh man, look at this. Mother load right here. Let me close my gate. I'm not coming back out. Let me walk into Manimal Cactus. Okay, so now with this pollen, I'm gonna put this pollen on all the other cacti. So right now I collected this pollen from cactus number 5, which I would say that's flower number 5 and 6, but they're the same one. So I'm done with this. Now I'm just going to pollinate these flowers. You know what, I dropped my brush here. So this is just like a huge orgy. So I'm gonna use this to pollinate this this Stenocereus pernosis hybrid. Ooh, look at the amount of pollen. Let's see. Look at the amount of pollen. So this is gonna be an easy pollination here. Let me force open the stigma and pollinate that puppy with all this pollen here. This is a whole lot of pollen. Okay, let me get a little more. Okay, so now that's flower number 4. Now let's go to flower number 3, which is the Stenocereus martinezii right here. Let's see. Look at this pollen. It is insane. It's insane how much pollen I have here. So I'm gonna just look for the stigma. Where's the stigma? Right here. I'm just gonna dab this on. So this better set fruit right here, because I just put a crap load of pollen here. Okay, so now we're going to flower number 2, which might be a clone of this one. I'm not sure, but you know what? Even though I already put other pollen in there, I'm just gonna dab a little bit on this one, just in case it's not a clone. So I'm just gonna dab a little bit of this pollen here. Look at all this pollen. It's absolutely crazy. Those 2 last flowers gave like some crazy pollen. So okay, Now, let's go to flower number 1. And I'm going to use some of this pollen also. I know this seems like overkill. I just really want fruit. And so this is why I do this, because I want some damn pitayas. I want some fruit here. So, let me point my camera up. Let me see. So, I'm going to get some of this pollen here. Insane amount of pollen. Look at this. I'm just going to dab it on here. This is insane. And that's a wrap, guys. So, I pollinated 5 different cacti, 6 different flowers today. And I will do an updated video. I will put little signs. I think I was going to write it with a marker, but I don't like doing that. So what I'm going to do is put a little piece of tape to keep track. And that's why I make these videos too, to help me keep track of what I pollinate. So you could see that flower is what I pollinated here. If this flower falls down within a week or 2, then I don't have to worry about what pollen I used. I just really want fruit, so I don't really care what pollen it took. When I'm doing control hybrids, I'll bag the flower before and after I pollinate. But I'm leaving it open. I'm even letting the bees come in the morning and ravage the flower for whatever pollen they could take. Anyways, this is quite substantial, the pollen here, from that last plant, the last cactus. So I'm actually going to freeze this just in case I need backup. So I'm going to let this sit out in my counter, and in the morning I'll go ahead and freeze this. Anyways, that's it for today, guys. Cheers.